let's hear from the coach. This is Behind the Beard with Bobby Smirniotis, Forge FC head coach and sporting director. Now, the woman who takes us there, here's Mackenzie Barwell on the Forge Audio Network.
Week 6 of Behind the Beard, joined by head coach and sporting director, Coach Bobby Smirniotis. As always, thank you so much for taking the time. How are you feeling after a long day of travel yesterday? Because rumor has it your plane was on the tarmac for a good 2 hours before you took off. Is that true?
Yes, that is true. It's part of travel and part of the season. You know, we've always had these interesting trips over the years, and coming out of there, you know, we had, I think, 4.5 or 5 hours added to our final day with being on the plane, coming off the plane, getting on another plane, and finally making it home.
You got off and then?
Oh, yes, we did.
What time did you get back yesterday?
Yeah, we landed back in Toronto at around 8:30 p.m.
And you left in the morning, no?
Left the hotel at 6:30 in the morning Pacific time. Not the longest trip in Forge history. For those who don't know, in year one, it took us 23 hours door to door to get back from Pacific to Hamilton with 2 stopovers and 3 flights.
I'm holding back the laughter right now. It's not funny. It's kind of funny, though.
It is when you think back at it.
I talked to Noah briefly earlier this week, and I was curious to get your perspective. How do you go about training sessions during these travel periods? You were in Winnipeg, then you were over in BC, and obviously getting in some training before and after these matches. But how do you tackle situations like those?
Yeah, most of it, you just try to stay on your periodization schedule. So based on the day of the game and what you do the day before the game, day after the game. So you stay on your same schedule. Obviously, the venue changes.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't have as much of the equipment as you do back at home, but as coaches, we're experienced enough to try and make sure that we put things together properly for the guys to make sure they're getting the right things tactically out of it, technically, and then physically. So we just stay on the same course. That's the most important thing. Stay on the same course that you have. So you're trying to keep the guys at the peak levels of fitness for the games.
Just make it work with the resources that you have.
Yes.
Okay. Before we chat about the regular season, I want to turn to your time with Sigma, because I've had a few conversations recently, not only with Noah, but Seba and Chris, and they talked about how influential that period of time was for them. What did that do for your career as a coach and transitioning and coming into your time with Forge?
That was a place for over 15 years where I was able to grow an idea on how to develop players, how to work with players, how to make players better, and give them an opportunity to keep on playing this game. So off the field, there's a lot of responsibilities, which I think prepared me well for getting into this job and building the team as we did in the early years with my brother who was here. From the coaching component, it gave me a very puristic way of working, of a way of really sticking to a way of playing, a way of developing players, and really, believing in what you do. And I think that's the one thing I tried to translate when I started here with Forge. It's to build a culture, to build an identity of a way of playing, and stick to it. Don't waver too much from it. And that has nothing to do with formations and all of this, but more on the principles of the game. And I think when you're able to do that at the youth level, where winning doesn't matter, but developing is the most important thing, I think you're able to see what works, what doesn't work, what you need to change as you go forward. And I think that's helped me a lot as I transitioned into the professional game.
And in developing these players, some of them you're still coaching today. Do you find that was very beneficial coming in with Forge as well?
Yeah, of course. I think it's important for every successful club. I think having a successful academy or a vehicle in behind to make sure that you have a steady flow of players that have a identity that's very similar or the same as the first team is very important. And it's no secret that the backbone of this club was built off of a lot of players that came through the Sigma Academy, and that continues to be the same thing as we've seen every year, 1 or 2 players making the jump from there. And that's something that we want to expand. We want to expand with our footprint in Hamilton.
Yeah.
And part of our partnership with Hamilton United and so on, is bring our expertise and be able to expand our reach, and also our ability to bring players from a youth system up to first team football.
What's that process like? You mentioned being able to call up these players. Is that still the case? You've obviously made a bunch of connections there.
Yeah, so we know every year some of the bright talents that are coming through the academy system, and which ones, need, let's say, the stimulus of training in a first team environment. So you look at a guy like Noah Jensen, and he's been in the Forge environment, I want to say, since 2019.
Yeah.
So he's a guy that not only became a pro a couple of years after that, but was already in the environment. He knew what the place looked like, what the training was like, what the level was like. Malcolm Duncan, who's with us this year, same thing, has been in the environment since then. And I think that's important, and we continue to do that today. On a week where we have full week of training, there'll always be a couple of players in from the academy, and going through those experiences to make sure that if they make this jump, that they're better prepared for it, whether it be here or anywhere else in the game beyond youth football.
Well, Noah was telling me about how him and Malcolm have played together since they were 11, so it's no surprise to me that they kind of came probably holding hands actually when they came to Forge.
Yes, some of these guys have been around each other for a long time.
It's cool. It's cool to see. Now shifting back to this past weekend, being in these new environments, like you said, different stadium, different conditions, how do you, from a coaching perspective, prepare players to, for example, playing at 10 p.m.? What are the kinds of things that you can do to help them out in those situations?
Yeah, I think in this one, being away for the days and traveling straight from Winnipeg, with it being a quick turnaround, we decided not to come back home and travel straight to Vancouver. That also takes a little bit of the travel time away. That allows us to adjust a little bit to those the time difference a little bit, and get prepared to play a midweek game that's, like you said, a 10 p.m. Back home. But beyond that, it's business as usual. We try and play our football. We stick to our principles to the best of our ability. And, in these two games, I think we've done that. And it's been unfortunate when you look at the results, for especially the output we put into both games in the first half, and the chances that were created in both games early on. And, football sometimes can be very beautiful and very cruel at the same time. And this past week, we've seen the cruel component of it, where we've done some excellent stuff in the attack, created some very good opportunities, and being scored on with the opponent's first shot on goal. But I always say, what's happening to you today is something that you will be doing to others a little bit later down the road.
Well, I was just going to ask you how you kind of assess the weekend and going into Tuesday, as what I think pretty much that sums it up.
Yes, it does.
What about you, though? Is it a late afternoon coffee to keep you awake for the 10 p.m. game?
No, I like a good espresso. A good espresso or macchiato for a late game. But yeah, it's just making sure we've got a good routine along with the players. Same thing with our staff. Especially when you're on the road and it's there's a lot of free time in between. You just got to keep a good routine of what you're doing, and a good routine usually has a few espressos in a day.
You heard it here first. Okay, that's all I have for you, Bobby. Thank you.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
This has been Behind the Beard with Mackenzie Barwell and Bobby Smirniotis. If you like what you heard, please like, follow, subscribe, comment, and share.